Hello and welcome to Tales from the Comic Shop, the show that takes you behind the counter. I'm your host, Joe, and joining me today, as always, is Eddie D'Angelini and Roger Prouse. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Hey, I'm Eddie D'Angelini. I am the co-owner and co-manager of Hidey Ho Comics in Santa Monica, and I am also the writer and artist of the comic strip Collectors at collectorscomic.com.
And I'm Roger Prouse, not nearly as talented as Eddie, but I do co-own the Nerd Store out in West Valley, Utah, and I co-run the Wasatch Comic Con in West Valley, Utah.
All right, and we're going to jump right into it today. We're going to start off with the news, and the big news that's on everyone's mind. No free book day this year, guys. How do you feel about that?
Sad, but also relieved, given the amount of work that it is.
Timing would not have been good.
No, yeah, but even still, given the amount of work that it is, not doing it is kind of like getting a week off from work or something, or being able to stay home from school or something. So
yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah,
it's a snow day, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a real good way to put it. Yeah. Yeah. No, okay. So we should caveat that by saying technically at this point, the industry stance is that it hasn't been canceled. It has been postponed indefinitely.
Right.
So
yes,
theoretically there could still be one. Their industry has been pretty adamant that they will figure out a date. I'm not sure how they're going to manage that with what's going on a state by state basis. I have my skepticisms of whether we'll see it at all this year, but technically that's the industry stance right now.
Okay, and so what that means is you guys have been stuck as retailers with a bunch of free comic book day product. And I don't know if everyone knows this, but we're going to put it out there. Retailers have to buy the books that they give away. Okay. So that leaves us in a to sell or not to sell conundrum. I understand that some of the stuff is already up on eBay.
And we just looked.
we found out as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I guess the immediate question is, how do you guys feel about that? What do you guys plan to do with your stock? If you have plans?
Me personally, I would never sell the stuff, but I really don't care if others do. I mean, the truth is, like you said, we pay for the stuff. So if we turn around and sell it and recoup our costs for those books or all the books that we've given away over the years, I'm certainly not going to fault anyone. But for me, it serves a much better purpose to have them in the shop to give away, not just on Free Comic Book Day, but anytime, because I always order, I don't know if you do this, Roger, I always order more than what I'm going to give away on Free Comic Book Day, because that just affords me to have stuff, under the counter that when I see kids, I say, hey, kid, you want a comic? And I can just, bring them in to comicdom by giving them free stuff, whenever I see a kid, here's a free comic. And that's a much better marketing tool than selling them, whatever you have left over, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know if it would be feasibly possible for us to purchase more than we can give away on Free Comic Book Day. So that's never really been our philosophy with it, but we do some of the same stuff. We get those situations. I usually give away like one of the, $1, the little dollar Marvel books that they give that are like the issue 1 preview, stuff like that. I usually kind of rely on those for the giveaway stuff to kids, or occasionally, some of the stuff that we have returns on that we have to strip the cover. I'll give them the coverless book or whatever. Don't tell them I'm not supposed to do that, but I do it anyways.
You just outed yourself.
I totally did. Yeah.
Okay, and then another interesting situation. I mean, the Nerd Store is open today, but you guys were not able to.
You should preface this by saying that we're actually recording this on what would be Free Comic Book Day.
Yeah, this is on the second. True. Yep. Yeah, and so we were not doing Free Comic Day. This is our first day open, in fact, and for us specifically, while we were closed during this whole thing, we actually did a full remodel of our store. So that involves an entire reset. Like, we literally moved every product, every shelf. We got brand new shelving in. Like, it was a huge, huge ordeal. And so that alone has a lot of its hurdles. If we had Free Comic Book Day, we would have been screwed this year, frankly. However, we did get some isolated phone calls and some interest, but I think most people pretty much either knew or assumed that it really wasn't a thing at this point. I'm waiting, as far as what we're doing with the books, I'm going to hold on. I'm going to wait to see what happens. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up telling shops, hey, just try and get with the other shops in your state and maybe elevate it by state has a different date. I think that would probably be the smartest way to go about this in the long term. Frankly, I might just go ahead and talk to the other. I mean, there's literally 3 shops that really control most of the market in my area, and we're all friends and we're on good terms. So I might just go talk to them about that anyhow, even if the publishers don't lead on that, because Free Comic Book is a great event. You know, it draws a lot of people, gets a lot of publicity, brings a lot of new people into your shop that unfortunately many don't come back normally, but they do come that day. And it's a really good way to keep people up to date with the changes you make. And, we find, especially with our store, because we do a little bit of everything, not just comics, a lot of people come in and say, oh, well, I didn't know that you guys had so many toys. Maybe I'll come back and buy toys from you when, I wasn't buying toys from you before, so even though they aren't really comic customers, it does get the name out there and get the exposure out there a little better.
Yeah, no, Eddie, you guys have a history of going pretty big with Free Book Day, almost putting on a little carnival, for a lack of a better word, in your parking lot last year, right?
Yeah, we do. Well, sorry, go ahead, ask your question.
No, yeah. What does it take to put on a Free Book Day? Like, what all goes into it in a normal year?
Well, what we've been doing since we've had the shop, a little backstory here. The first year we had the shop and Free Comic Book Day came around, we just kind of didn't really do much, thinking that, people will just come, and they didn't. And it was just the place was empty, and we're like, what the heck? So we decided, okay, next year we're going to go big. So next year we started what we called Heidi Ho Comic Con, where we literally held a comic convention in our shop. And at that time, we were in our other location, which is huge. Roger's seen it. It's
massive.
It's giant.
It's a warehouse.
Yeah, it was like a warehouse. So you literally could move stuff out of the way and put up all kinds of tables, and they have like a huge artist alley. And actually, even we put in 3 10 by 10 pipe and drape booths for some of the publishers that we had there. So we literally put on a one-day Comic-Con that featured all local publishers and local creators. So we had Stranger Comics, Aftershock Comics, Fanbase Press. I forget who else we've had there as far as actual publishers go. And then just a ton of local creators, comic publishers, self-publishers, stuff like that. We'd always try to have at least 1 or 2 known creators. Like we've had Christos Gage. Goodness,
Marguerite Bennett.
Marguerite Bennett.
That was one we were jealous of.
Yeah, Jaime Hernandez, which actually was my favorite guest that we had. And we would just literally have an all-day convention where we had a giant Comic-Con going on inside the shop, and then we also had a big parking lot. And out there we had like a giant 50-cent comic book sale where just tables and tables and tables of boxes of comics. And you would have people literally going through those boxes all day and buying like several long boxes worth of stuff. So and then we moved into our newer location, which is a bit smaller, but we got lucky where we got the big empty storefront right next to us to hold it all in. So
perfect.
Yeah. So we were planning on doing something like that again this year, but then everything just kind of went bust.
And that's similar for what we do we do Wasatch Comic Con the week before Free Comic Book Day. So my con was supposed to be like last weekend. And so we do that mostly because the reason we made the decision is because most stores try to do like big signings with their local creators on Free Comic Book Day, and us being in Utah, most of the big names are not local to us. So if I was to get, decent sized names, I found the week before Free Comic Book Day was a day that most people were prepped. Most people didn't have a whole lot of other things going on, and there was a lot of availability to get guests. So that's kind of why we did it that way. But we then do on Free Comic Book Day itself, we use that event to advertise Free Comic Book Day. And then on Free Comic Book Day, we do have some of our favorite local guests come back in. Phil Seavey is one of that, and Doug Wagner are 2 that have supported us really well. The Salt City Strangers guys in general, that whole bunch of group of guys has been really good to us. A couple other local guys as well. So we've had a really great group of guests that honestly are some of our and Eddie, I think you'll say this too, that they're people that you could kind of become friends with over the years too. Like you have regular kind of conversations with.
Oh, yeah. Since the first year I did that show, there were both creators that you had there as guests and also the fans themselves that would come out that I ended up becoming friends with,
Totally.
and
Yeah.
would stay in contact throughout the year on social media, and would look forward to seeing once I was there in town.
Yeah, and that's, I think, for
So
me,
yeah.
the hardest part about killing this year and postponing Wasatch Comic Con, and we're trying to scramble to figure out what to do there. But the hardest part about that, is we didn't lose that much money. We hadn't done that much work on it. We don't really make money on that event anyway. So financially, it wasn't difficult. But we had a lot of people that I'm used to seeing every year, and a lot of new guests that I was really excited to be able to see and hang out with. And that disappointment's really been the hardest thing about that.
Oh, I definitely will say that how many years has it been now?
This was supposed to be the third.
Yeah. But you had some pretty good guests the first year, and then the second year you had even better guests. And then when you saw the lineup of the people that you were getting for the third one, it was getting even better. So it was like growing every year as far as the quality of guests that you were lining up. So look forward to who you get next year.
Yeah, we're working on it.
Yeah. This was
as long as you.
I was supposed to come out for Wasatch, and
all right.
I was excited about it. I was disappointed that this had to happen. Okay, so that takes us to what do you guys? What is the prep time required to put on one of these events? Like, how much man hours are you guys out because of the cancellation already?
Well, for me, the prep time, and I had already started for this year. It's something that starts really early for me. Unlike Roger, we have more shops here in the LA area, so it is a really tough competition to get certain guests, to get the good names, and you have to start early because literally shops will start asking some of the bigger names to be at their free comic book day, like right as soon as the last one ended. So you've got to strike early. You've got to start for the 2020 free comic book day. Most shops, including myself, start asking and inviting guests in 2019. Because otherwise you wait too late, they're all taken up and you're left with nobody. Frankly, fortunately, I've got a lot of great friends who are local creators, so I know I can rely on them every year to give them a table, give them a booth, and a lot of my customers respond really well to them. But you always want to get at least a couple of really good names, and you've got to start early. And then after that, you've got to start planning out. I mean, it's literally you're putting on a convention, is what I'm doing. So you got to plan out table placements, put this person there, put that person there. What kind of sale are we going to have? I got to make sure I'm staffing the shop in the convention area with enough staff. And so, yeah, a lot goes into it. Over the years, it got a little easier and got a little more automated. But that first year, especially, it was just sweating bullets the whole time, trying just every detail, trying to make sure that everything worked out just right. And thankfully, it has.
Yeah, for us, I mean, more of it has been Wasatch. It was a lot of hours. I mean, in order for us to get a lot of these guests, we tour conventions 4 or 5 conventions a year on average. Honestly, probably more than that, probably closer to 6 or 7 if you count the smaller ones, which is expensive and laborious. And the primary reason we're at those shows is to get guests and get some face time. Now, there's other benefits and we do other things to try and make it so that our expenses aren't as high, but we never make money with the exception of San Diego Comic-Con. So I couldn't even tell you how many hours and how much time and how much money that is at this point for getting those guests. Luckily, that isn't work that was wasted because I'm able to roll those into future. All of my guests for this year have all agreed to do it another time whenever we get it rescheduled at this point. So, I'm not going to call it a waste, but that's been where the biggest hit to us immediately has come in. As far as the free comic book day event for us, ours is not as competitive as an area, and we use the real active event to kind of parlay into it. And honestly, most people that are the comic people in my area hit all three of our shops in our area. Like, we know we're going to see all the same people that day. It's just a matter of who sees who first. Like, we're all going to see the same people. And so we actually work together on our policies, figure out what everyone's going to do, so we're not over competing each other and making it so that we're kind of racing to the bottom. And we kind of work together to make it work best for every shop. But we hadn't really done much prep for Free Comic Book Day outside of order our titles this year. So for us, it wasn't that big of a sacrifice when it happened at this point. It would have gone a couple more weeks, it may have been, but we kind of hit right where it needed to be.
Eddie, how do your regs feel about kind of the big atmosphere? Do they like it and seeing more faces brought in than they're normally in the shop? Like, is that
for me, probably a very small percentage of my regulars are the people that show up for Free Comic Book Day, to be honest with you. A lot of them just, they don't want to deal with the craziness and the crowds, and they tend to stay away. There are some that come because I see them, but the majority of people that come are all new faces, people that I've never seen before. And granted, a large percentage of them come in, they ask where the free comics are, they go in and they grab one of everything, and then they're gone and you never see them again. And it used to make me a bit salty, but I don't care anymore now. It's like, what's the big deal? For really, what I end up with out of all of it is that a small percentage of those people will come back, in 2 weeks later or a month later, or they'll write something really cool on Yelp saying, "Oh my God, this place is amazing. I went there because I knew there was going to be free comics, but I saw all the other stuff they had, and I ended up buying this and that and this and that." So it brings in, I would rather have new faces, even if most of them are there just for the free comics. I want new faces because I want people to know that we're there in the community. The regulars I see all the time, they're going to come in and buy their stuff anytime. Give me some fresh faces that I can work with and maybe retain at least a small percentage of them as regular customers.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I would say, like, when you have something like this COVID situation, or like the earthquake was for us and stuff like that too, you start to see like people sharing your stuff on Facebook that to help you gain reach and stuff that actually has like real impact when you start needing to have some of that exposure and kind of adapt. And a lot of those people are not people you see in store either. A lot of those people are people that showed up once for Free Comic Book Day and followed you because you posted funny memes, and then they kept coming and they kept helping you out. And so it does have its own trickle effect. I think the more you support the community, you can't, like you said, Eddie, you can't get sour on those people who don't financially support the event, because realistically, it's just the price of doing business, and you just look at it that way. And, and every time you do those, that there's a certain amount they're going to happen. And I just look at that as my goal is to make as few of those to happen. And that gives me something to aspire to everyone to improve on every Free Comic Book Day, is the way to make sure everyone that comes in finds something that they had to have before they leave. And if I'm not doing that, then my job's not done.
Right. And even if they don't buy anything, they just come in and get the free comics. If they are, if they like the atmosphere and everything that's going on there enough to just hang out for a while, then even that, my job is done, because now they remember this place, and there might come a time later on where they think, oh, this would be such and such would be a perfect gift. Oh yeah. You know what? You remember that store? Yeah, we should go check them out. I bet you they have it.
Well, and you've been around long enough to see where a lot of those Free Comic Book Day kids have now become regular customers too. So even if their parents weren't, they remember that, getting dragged there every once a year and having that be a fun experience. And then when they get their own cash, all of a sudden you're the cool place that they want to spend their money too.
Right. I see that more with the Magic community, to be honest with you, because we used to have a junior constructed league on Friday nights. That was all like kids and preteens. But we don't have that league anymore because all those kids have opted out and they're now older and they're still coming and they're playing with all the adults now. Yeah. So you see it there.
Yeah, that's how for us, it's Pokemon. In our Pokemon tournaments, you'll come in and it's amazing because you'll walk in and there'll be like, we have a customer that brings in, his kid, I think, was 8 when he started coming in for Pokemon. And I would watch this little kid at 8 or 9 years old, and he was like wiping the floor with 30-plus-year-old dudes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. This kid was just annihilating everyone in the store. He ended up, this kid ended up going to Worlds. He's like a prodigy, but this kid comes in, he's, I want to say he's in the low, 10, 11 range, I believe now, but he comes in and just out competes most of the adults coming in there, and they don't ever know what's coming. So yeah, it's
Well,
entertaining.
that's awesome.
Well, that kind of answered my next question. I mean, so I notice at my LCS, there's definitely a lot more kids on the floor of the store on Free Comic Book Day, which is really cool. I like seeing kids there. I always want to see kids in comic shops. One of my major issues with the industry, it seems like you go to a lot of places and they're just not kid friendly anymore. And we're just not traditional comic nerd friendly even at this point,
Sure.
Like you'll go into a store and the guy will be banging his new metal at as loud as the speakers can take them and ignoring new customers coming in to
Sure.
talk about cards with some guy who's in there every day, not buying much, but talking to his buddy,
If that guy worked for me, he wouldn't be working for me very much longer.
Yeah, it's comic book guy in The Simpsons. There's a reason that's a cliche, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when I first took over the shop almost 6 years ago, it very much had that atmosphere. And my wife and I, we beat that out of everybody as quickly as we could.
You have to.
Yeah, it's
for what it's
if you
worth,
play music
Joe.
in the shop. Yeah, you play music in the shop. It needs to be something that anybody can enjoy at a comfortable level. Just like if you were walking into a Starbucks or a Barnes and Noble,
Yep.
You greet everybody. You are attentive to everybody, and you don't just sit there and hang out and talk to your friends all the time and ignore the customers. You make sure you go up to them and you ask them, "Do you need help? Can I help you find something? How about a recommendation?" You become their friend.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, there's nothing wrong with new metal, from my opinion. I'm just using that as the example of the stores that I've been into where the customer service was less than optimal.
We're just going to turn this into ragging. We're just going to turn this into ragging on Creed for an hour.
Well, but what I will say about that whole situation is that a comic shop is a business like any other business. And if you walked into, I don't know, a Nordstrom's or an AT&T store and you got that kind of service, you would just turn around and leave.
Yeah.
So why would I want my store to be like that? I no.
One thing I'd kind of correct, Joe, that you were saying is you were talking about that as an industry problem. And I don't look at that as an industry problem because the industry has not turned its back on kids. In fact, I've never seen the industry is literally focused on nothing more than kids. Like it is literally the biggest focus of the entire industry. Shops have not all adapted to that. Individual shops have different policies, and frankly, there's only so much the industry can do to influence individual shops, especially in something like this where you can be so easily funded by back issues and stuff where you can just do that, right? You can just be that comic dungeon store, and frankly, there's a customer base for it. So having some of those comic dungeon stores probably keeps some of that customer base where they're happy and lets other customer base goes where the other customers are happy too. So I don't necessarily mind their existence, but I do agree with you in the fact that we need to find a way to get more of the new readers and casual readers and non-superhero people into the stores that really cater to them rather than into those comic dungeon stores where they get a bad taste in their mouth.
Yeah, and that's why we try to make our shop a very family-friendly atmosphere so that some of the regulars who are older are coming in with their kids and they're exposing their kids to it, and eventually their kids get turned on to it.
Yeah, for sure.
No, I mean, one of my favorite things I've ever seen on an FCB day is a little girl in there and she's carrying around a My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, but then she picks up a Green Lantern book off the table and walks out with that too. That's awesome. Yeah. And we need to, as an industry, or not as an industry, like you said, but just be more aware of catering to those people if we want comics to continue on for another 100 years.
Well, and as shoppers and customers, because presumably, the listenership to this will be primarily them. I would say one of the other things is to understand and respect that there's different kind of consumers, and so there's going to be different kinds of stores, and that it's totally fine for a store not to be your style or up for you. Like I have people all the time who don't like my store, and I'm fine with that because I'm good with who I am, and I'm just not the store for them, and there's no problem with that. And so
I told you it's just not my thing, Roger. No, your store is great. I mean, you've done with that space in the mall. I saw pictures of what it looked like when you guys first took it over, and what you guys have done with it. It's amazing. So of course, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
All right. Well, since we have covered the human aspect of Free Comic Book Day, let's talk about the financial aspect. Do you see a boom from Free Comic Book Day, and how much of a hit for you guys is missing this Free Comic Book Day going to be?
Well, for me, it's a hit because for all the time and or expense that I put into it, I make way more. Um, I do enough business by running not just the convention side of it, but also by having uh, sales going on all day. We usually carry it on for the weekend. Um, Now everyone knows that obviously you guys know how my rent is really high there in the Santa Monica area, and I can make enough in that day or weekend to pretty much cover that for a month.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty big feat considering what Southern California Santa Monica rents are for retail spaces.
Yeah. I kind of lump Wasatch Comic Con with Free Comic Book Day for me. Like they're very similar. Like they're right on top of each other for a reason. So, when it comes to Wasatch Comic Con, we really strive to break even. Most of the time we don't quite, but that's okay. That we really look at as a goodwill towards the industry, goodwill towards the create. We look at it both as goodwill towards the creators and helping establish new creators get a new fan base. We look at it as a goodwill towards our customers, letting them come face to face with people they want to see. And so we do that more as a service than we do as a business model. But the idea is that bleeds into the next weekend, and Free Comic Book Day is where we make our money. And so yeah, for us as well, Free Comic Book Day, it's every year's a little different, but it's another Black Friday for us, and Black Friday for us being in a mall is a big thing. And so it really right there rivals Black Friday every year as far as what we'll do. And in fact, yeah, in that weekend we're pretty similar between both. So yeah, it's a big hit.
I never thought about that. You do Black Friday in a mall.
Yeah.
So it's like it's easy pickings for you. For me, trying to do Black Friday,
it's not
tough.
even worth it.
I do well. Like the last one, we did really well. But I gotta work for that money. I really gotta work at it.
We have to do less working for it and more prepping for it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's try and end this on a positive note. What are you missing most about No Free Comic Book Day this year?
I'll start on that one. So for me, it's just the event, like there's something about being there with the excitement and being there with all the people. And, I'm always the guy doing the crowd control because Charles runs the store. So I'm the guy that's there early, talking to the people in line and keeping them in good spirits while they wait for us to open. I don't know what your lines are like, Eddie, but like for us, we literally have had lines that are past the center court in the mall, which is almost an entire length of the mall. Like it's probably a good 300-400 feet of lines of people before we open through stanchions and everything. And so I'm the one up there keeping them in good spirits and talking to people and trying to give them that good experience before they come in and telling them all the rules and teaching them where to go and talking to them about what Free Comic Book Day is and how it functions and all those kind of things, right? And getting them all hyped up. And so it's there's a lot of excitement. There's, like you said, there's a lot of kids, and I love watching the kids in that environment. A lot of people take their kids and dress them up, and I love seeing all the costumes and how much fun they have with that. And so that for me is the biggest thing. Like Eddie said, it's not so much regulars, it's all these new people. So, I miss seeing my regulars for sure, but that's a little different for that event. It's just the excitement.
It's funny. I don't get the lines. At first, like those first couple of years, I thought, oh, we're not doing it right. We're failing because we're not getting lines of people waiting, for us to open. And then I realized, it's LA. It's the West Side. People don't get up that early. They're too cool to stand in line, starting at 6 a.m. But we do get massive crowds. They're just kind of like spread out through the whole day.
Sure.
They say it starts at 10. Yeah, I'll get there 10:30 or 11. And that's usually what happens. But what am I missing about that? What I really love about the whole aspect of that day is that all the creators that I have, creators, the publishers, they're all people that I've worked with, been in contact with, and have hung out with in real life and on social media all throughout the year. So, our lives are so busy. It's that one day to be able to all see each other all at the same day, just like, at any convention around here that we all, have tables for. It's like that day or that weekend where we all get to hang out with each other. So I kind of miss that.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And when I was giving all the shout outs to the artists earlier too, I forgot to shout out my buddy Chad Harden too, who's been one of our most hardened supporters through since we started as a store. So I will feel remiss if I don't mention him.
Fair enough. All right. Well, thank you for informing us about what it takes to do a free comic book day and what's going on with you guys since the shutdown for COVID. I think we'll move along now, and I think we're going to do a segment that we like to call Staff Picks. So I'm going to ask each of you to pick a piece of reading material for everybody who's on quarantine that you enjoyed that you would like to tell us about. I am going to pick Gail Simone's run on Gen 13. And the reason I'm doing that is because, well, I've been on quarantine, so I've been doing a bunch of reading, and I found that on DC Universe, and I'm just absolutely enjoying it. It's a great book. It's a great take, rebooting some characters that were kind of one-dimensional. I mean, they had beautiful art from the first telling, but the characters just didn't quite resonate the way I think they could have, considering the sales of that book. Like, I think that it launched J. Scott Campbell's career, but there was just something about Gen 13 that just didn't capture the fans, and I think you can see that because it ended. And it came back with DC in 2001, I believe, and Gail Simone took over, and her voice is just perfect for these teenagers who are put in just a just horrible situation where they find out that their parents aren't actually their parents, and they kind of have to gel as this group very quickly to overcome the challenges put in front of them. And it's very clever, it's witty, it's fun, and you get to see Caitlin Fairchild fight a dinosaur and then team up with the dinosaur to kill the people hunting the dinosaur. So, yeah, can't recommend it enough.
I'll go next. Mine is kind of maybe a little bit of a out there pick. Read a few things, and one thing that stuck out that I really liked a lot was an original graphic novel called The Quitter by Harvey Pekar and illustrated by, I hope I'm saying his name right, Dean Haspiel. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that artist. But anyway, okay. I think he's done much more indie stuff, nothing mainstream. But it was a book that Harvey Pekar wrote and was released in 2005. And just in the last year or so, I've become a fan of Harvey Pekar's writing. I kind of wasn't hip to it when he was alive, but lately I've been going back and reading some of it because at one point a while back, someone compared my comic strip, calling it the American Splendor of today. So I thought, going back and reading some of Harvey Pekar's stuff, I see what kind of what a compliment that is.
Yeah, it's high praise.
This book here was a book that he wrote later in his life, and it was a very real, very sometimes painful, sometimes humorous look at his childhood. And a lot of it really centers around his upbringing from his Jewish immigrant parents. And a lot of that I identified with because I grew up with Italian immigrant parents, and there was some similarities there. And mostly from his mom, he developed this idea that he has to be a perfectionist in everything. And it came from that Jewish immigrant mentality of you have to be the best. Otherwise you're going to be poor. You're going to fall behind. You're going to be taken advantage of, and you won't make it, and you'll be nothing, and you'll starve. And he kind of grew up with that mentality kind of driven into him by his mom. So everything that he did from childhood, whether it was playing football in school or jobs that he just had to be the best. And when things didn't work out, he got so discouraged that he would just quit. And that's where the name The Quitter comes from. And it took him quite some time in his life to realize that him quitting when things weren't perfect all the time came from that onslaught from his mom and that Jewish immigrant upbringing, and how that really affected him, and that he took longer than most people in trying to find what it is that he really wanted to do, or what he was really good at, because he never stick with anything long enough to really get good at it. And he saw how in this book, you see how that really affected him, his upbringing, his adulthood, and everything, and how he really had to overcome that, and that mindset, that old Jewish immigrant mindset from the 30s and the 40s. And the book was written at a time after his first diagnosis and conquering of cancer, and before his second bout. So he said that later in life that he hopes to have a window of good health before he finally succumbs to death, where he can write some good material and write something lasting. And I think this book really was it. It was just a really honest portrayal of the average Joe childhood from immigrant parents, and what that all meant, and how that turned him into the person that he became. So I highly recommend it. A very original, very starkly honest, and like I said, sometimes painful, sometimes humorous story, real story about his younger years, his childhood, his adolescence, and his early adulthood.
Yeah, awesome. I think it's really great that we got a nonfiction suggestion too, because I think nonfiction comics are really underrated. So mine's not nearly that serious, but one of my favorite small publisher titles that's come out in the last couple of years, and I'm going along with Joe's theme of dinosaurs here. There's a little book from Action Labs, came out a couple years ago, called Voracious. I've talked about it quite a bit in different platforms, but never on this show. So the concept of that book is that a formerly trained chef ends up finding out he had an uncle that died. He goes back to get his inheritance from him in southern Utah, walks into the guy's weird house and finds a suit that he puts on. It travels back in time, and he ends up with dinosaurs around him. Turns out there's a flamethrower in the suit. He's fighting one off. Smells delicious, so he decides to open up a restaurant selling dinosaur meat in southern Utah. It's a fantasy sci-fi kind of book. It's really fun. It's one of my daughter's favorite books. There's some swearing if people are sensitive to that, but otherwise it's pretty good for kids as well. It's easy to follow, and it's one of those books that the premise hooks you, but then every twist, there's so many different twists and turns and places it goes that you just don't see coming, and you really never could, that it goes so much more than what the premise is, and you end up really happy. It's a 3-volume set, and I'd really recommend it. Check it out. It's a really good binge read. It's well worth the time. It's just a fun and easy to read, easy to digest, and a good distraction.
All right. So to reiterate, those titles that we suggest for staff picks this week are Gail Simone's Gen 13 Run,
Harvey Picar's The Quitter.
Sorry. And Voracious by Action Labs. It was written by Marcuson Nasso and illustrated by Jason Muir.
Awesome. All right, guys. It's getting to be that time. Let's close this thing out with this segment that we did last week, Cool Things, where we all share a piece of our collection that's near and dear to our hearts. I'll start things off, and I'm going to come back to a new purchase that I have just made of some original art. And this is very important to me because I have wanted a Greg Capullo Batman piece for as long as they've existed. This is not that, but it's the next best thing. It's a Jock Batman page from the New 52 run. It's from issue 44, I believe. Yes. No, I'm sorry. It's issue 44, page 20, and it features Batman on it, and I'll put it up for everyone to look at on the website and social media, and hopefully in the YouTube video as well. But it's just a really cool piece. I'm really happy to own it. And I mean, it's not Capullo, but it's Jock, which is another artist that I just am a huge fan of. That tech Bat Joker cover has just blown up over the last few years for him, and a lot of his other work.
He's pretty quintessential when it comes to Batman anymore. Yeah, he's definitely.
Yeah. No, it's not Capullo, but it's the next best thing in my opinion. What do you got, Eddie?
What's near and dear to my heart right now is I got a proof copy from my printer of my upcoming book, Collector's Annual number 5, Love and Collectors, the newest Collector's comic strip print annual. And it's cool to finally see this thing in print in my hand after months of work. So that'll definitely be out and available for sale by end of May, beginning of June. Currently, there's a Kickstarter going for this one right here, and you can check it out at collectorsonkickstarter.com.
Mine's got a small story behind it. So I was at a con that I ended up volunteering to help out with in Las Vegas last, I think it was October, November, somewhere in that range. So one of the later cons I did last year. And they had a charity auction afterwards that was benefiting the local children's hospitals. And one of the things that was donated was a custom sketch by Al Milgram. And I ended up winning the donation, kind of just wrote on it, draw whatever you want to draw. And then I had them, before I ever saw it, I didn't know what he was going to draw, but I had him ship it off to my friend David Barron, who is a colorist. He actually works with Jock on a lot of that Batman. And David just got this back to me today. And it's a really awesome full color Hulk piece that Ala did the illustrations on, and David's colors make it really pop. I think he did a fantastic job, so I'm really happy getting that back in.
Yeah, I saw you posted that. It looks really nice.
Yeah, it's a nice piece. I really enjoy it.
And we will have pictures of all of this up again on the social media. And since we're talking about social media, please go out and follow our Twitter, follow our Instagram, join our Facebook group. We'd love to hear back from you about what you think. Also, leave comments on the YouTube. Click and subscribe. We're still available on, I believe we are up on iHeart now. We are on Apple Podcasts. We are on Podcast-O-Matic. We are in the Google Podcasts. So, listen,
we're everywhere.
Subscribe, follow. Yeah, we are doing pretty good at getting ourselves out there.
We've gone viral. Bad timing for that.
That was awful.
Hey, man, can't be a dad without dad joking every now and then, right?
That is fair. And I think that is going to finish it off for us. So thank you, gentlemen, for your insight. We appreciate it very much. And good night.
And good night.
Adios.